Hi, it's Keith here, and I'd like to share some ideas with you around how buildings can support their surroundings and their urban context. So in a previous video that we did titled Architecture and Nature, we spoke about 5 principles that can inspire us. And in it, I mentioned the buffalo and how the buffalo is integrated into its environment and how it supports everything that's around it. For example, the tick birds sit on top of the buffalo and they clean the buffalo. And the buffalo composts the grasses that it eats. And if a predator takes out a buffalo, the predator eats the buffalo, then the vultures come, then the insects come. So nature is really designed in a way that every creature and every plant is the very ecosystem that it's living in. Animals are not isolated from their context, but they're completely mutually integrated into their immediate and their larger context. So how can we emulate this quality in our buildings, in our designs, in terms of their urban fabric, both physically and socially, really? So in nature, the laws that orchestrate this integratedness, they're multivalent, they're intricate, and our capacity to comprehend this, you could call it morphological emergence of living systems, really, this wholeness, is really something that we need to develop as a capacity. And when you look at nature carefully, each organism is whole in itself, and it contributes to the wholeness, the larger wholeness of the context that it's in, the integratedness of it's in. So comprehending this quality of wholeness requires a very different kind of thinking to that we can use to design computer programs or machines or robots. We can't use this kind of discursive logic to do that. And the moment we look at nature and we divide it up into natural systems, we're already in deep water, because nature is symbiotically related to itself and its surroundings. So systems thinking, which takes one thing and other and then connects them, is immediately doing the separatedness. And that's incongruent with how nature really is. So we need a kind of thinking that can notice the separateness of something and its connectivity simultaneously, not sequentially. So there's a porosity of the boundary between something and its context. So the question with architecture is, how can we design buildings that are not just self-serving, that aren't just in our own self-interests, but they contribute to the cultural life of their urban surroundings? And insofar as a building doesn't do this, if it is isolated, if it's only the expression of our own personal interest or self-interest, then it does absolutely, by definition, contribute to our cultural fragmentation. It's necessarily doing that. Now, if you remember the work of Christopher Alexander, he wrote a book called A New Theory of Urban Design. It's a fascinating book where he speaks about the wholeness, creating wholeness in urban environments, and how each increment that you do in an urban context needs to be whole in itself and contribute to the fabric, the urban fabric of the life around it, of its context. So what we're trying to do is look at buildings in a way that they're not only self-interest focused, but they're also community interest. They're also supporting what's around it. A man called Jan Gehl, an architect, urban designer from Denmark, wrote a book called The Life Between Buildings. And he says, very interesting, he says that buildings are not architecture, they're sculptures. Architecture is the interaction of people with the buildings. So what happens between people and the buildings is really the architecture. And he looks at this activity in an urban context, and he looks at 3 different kinds of outdoor activities that happen. And he qualifies them as necessary activities, optional activities, and social activities. Now, necessary activities are like going to work, going to school, waiting for the bus, just basic everyday tasks. Optional activities are like going for a walk outside because it's nice weather, or sitting around watching others, eating or playing, or just all those kind of activities. The social activities are contingent on the necessary and optional activities being active. In other words, they need to be there, they need to be partially established, And then the social activities, the interactions with people, the ad hoc meetings. And these social activities are absolutely critical and essential for forming the communal fabric of our social life. So Jan looks at the urban context in terms of this trilogy of activities. But this trilogy of activities is applicable to all buildings, really. Apartments, workplaces, almost all buildings. We have really interesting discussions and workshops on the first Tuesday of every month, open to those who have done our courses. So please feel free and welcome to join us. Thanks very much.